Right, good morning, everyone. We are going to wait just a couple of minutes while folks are joining in from the virtual lobby, and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we have everyone in from the lobby now. All right, so we will go ahead and get going. All right, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. My name is Hannah, and I co-manage the pre-development program with Marcus, who is here on the call with us today. If you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, we'd love to know what organizations you're coming from and what brought you to the webinar today. So today we are going to start with a walkthrough of all of the fundamental program information that you would need to know as a prospective applicant and how you should go about applying. We'll go over some resources that are available, look at some awarded project highlights, and then we will have time for question and answer at the end of the session. But as we're going through the session, if you have any questions, please feel free to put those questions in the chat. We are recording the session today, so if there is a question in the chat, we'll just read out the question and then answer that question so that everyone watching the recording later on will know the question that was asked. Okay, so I'll start with going over some high-level background information pretty quickly so that we can spend the bulk of our time on that application process, scoring, and what makes a successful project. The Livable Communities Act has several goals that are shared across all of our programs. And these goals are to create more housing choice across the region, create more living wage jobs, improve regional connections, support environmental sustainability by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and conserving natural resources. And a goal that's integrated into all of these goals that I just mentioned is to realize more equitable development outcomes. All of our LCA grants are partnerships between a city and a development team. You can partner with a county, a development authority like an HRA or an EDA. The vast majority of our applications are through a partnership with the city. So just for ease of explanation for the rest of the webinar, I'm going to be referring to the city, but just keep in mind that that can also be the county, HRA, EDA, Port Authority, some other government entity. So the city does need to be eligible to apply, and we have a list of eligible cities on our website. And if you have any questions about whether or not the city that the project that you're working on is eligible, or if you're interested in participating in LCA as a city, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to talk you through the process, or as a development team, we're happy to get you connected with the right contact at the city. So developers and community organizations cannot apply directly to the pre-development program, but can partner with an eligible city. So the application will come from that city, and if you're awarded a grant, the grant will go to the city. And we'll go into the details of that process a little bit later on in the presentation. And like I mentioned, if you are a city staff on the call and your city is not enrolled, or if you're a development team and the city where your project is located is not enrolled in LCA, please just reach out to us and we can get you all of the resources that you need to become a participating city. What is pre-development? Pre-development grants focus on goals for early stage projects. So you might have a site selected and needs support to decide on the best use for that site, or you might have a project in mind already and are trying to decide between 2 or 3 sites. That site selection stage is the earliest a project would typically come in. We usually see projects coming in for site design, community engagement, financial studies. Typically, there is a project in mind. There's usually a site selected, but we can support some projects that are in those earlier stages. We view pre-development as a pipeline into development. So you are absolutely able to apply to a pre-development grant and then apply to a development grant. We very occasionally will have a project apply to a development grant and then to a pre-development grant. That's pretty uncommon. We typically see projects going through pre-development and then on to development. This year, we have a total of $2 million available for both of the rounds of pre-development. So there's $1 million available in each round. And we have an award limit of up to $300,000 that can be awarded to each city in each round. Cities can submit up to 6 applications in each round. So for example, a city could submit 6 applications, each for $100,000. But only 3 of those applicants could be awarded the full funding if they score competitively. Pre-development grants are for a 2-year term after the date of award, and expenses are only eligible when the work is done after that date of award. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about applying, you're thinking about the timeline of your project. Any work that you do prior to pre-development awards being made is not eligible for reimbursement funding. The first round of pre-development will open on March 17th, with applications due on April 21st. And funding awards for that first round are expected to be made in June. The second round of pre-development will open on June 16th, and applications are due on July 21st. And for the second round, awards are expected to be made in early September. And for any folks who are on the call who were in our general webinar last week, we mentioned that we would be going through a web grants upgrade in April. So folks applying after April would see a different version. That upgrade has been delayed, so everyone will be working in the same version. So don't worry about a different version of web grants. Right, I'm going to hand it over to Marcus now to talk us through the application process.
Thank you, Hannah. So I am working on the pre-development grants with Hannah. I will be focusing mostly on the second round in terms of the evaluation, but you can talk to either of us in terms of exploring some of your ideas. So we'll get to that in a moment. So for now, we're going to talk through the application process and scoring, so you'll know what to expect, how to prepare, and I'll share several resources and tools for you to use as applicants. So let's start with the next slide with who is involved. In a typical application, there are 3 groups involved. The project team, and that can include a for-profit or a nonprofit developer. It could be a supporting community organization and either a general contractor or primary subcontractors. So that's the project team. The public applicant, as Hannah mentioned earlier, that's usually the city, but it could be, as she already noted, a port authority or a development authority. And then there's the Metropolitan Council. And in particular, we're talking about the Livable Communities program staff in this case. So each of these 3, each group has a role in preparing an application. Sometimes that's called a funding opportunity. You may have heard that term. There's also a role in communicating and managing the process if your project is selected for funding. And then lastly, documenting or cataloging deliverables. So we will talk a little bit more about that grant process in just a moment here. Pre-applications. So although, as Hannah showed, that first round starts in April, we have another in July. Cities that have a higher level of development activity may have their own pre-application process. That can be up to 2 months before our deadlines. So for example, if your project, the one that you're thinking about applying, is located in Minneapolis or St. Paul, you should plan on making a request for a formal city pre-application process that will determine which applications they will submit to LCA. So some of these deadlines have already passed. We recommend that you contact your city's planning department as soon as you can to work through any of those pre-application requirements. So we know, for example, for Minneapolis, it will be the second round you'll be thinking of. All right, thank you. All right, let's go over that overall application process. As you heard earlier, LCA applicants are usually participating cities or counties who work with private and nonprofit development partners. As a result, the process will be slightly different for everyone, depending on who's working on the project and what process each city has in place. In general, we recommend that interested project teams contact their city staff early to ask about applying to LCA, or if you're a city and you want to work on a specific site, to contact those project stakeholders, that project team. Contact your city's community development department as soon as you can to work through that process. Once the project is identified and the team has been identified to work on an application, city staff will start the application in our application portal. It's called Web Grants. And this is a note for city staff. Please send us an email with the list of who will be working on a grant application and include them in that email. Anyone who is on that list that has not worked in Web Grants with us before should register and get a Web Grants account. Getting that list of registered users all together at once, it helps us streamline approving those requests and getting each individual connected to the right association. And then communicating with you if questions come up during the submission or during that process of grant writing. After you submit your application, LCA staff will coordinate an eligibility review to make sure that things are eligible to apply as, and we'll do the scoring evaluation as well. Based on the scoring rank, staff will make a funding recommendation and present that recommendation to our Community Development Committee, or CDC. Once approved there, the funding recommendation awards are approved by the Metropolitan Council. So us, then CDC, then Council. Once a funding recommendation is awarded, the city applicant will start working with our grant administration staff. That's Kelly Nizworski. She will be your primary contact instead of Hannah or myself for managing the grant. You will have an orientation, finalize the grant agreement, and you'll have your requested activities and deliverables that we expect when you close out the grant. That's all happening there with the grant administration staff. Just as a reminder, the grant agreement is between the city and the council, and any sub-recipient agreement between a project team and city staff is worked out separately, usually after that process. An awarded project can technically start working on the grant activities as soon as the council approves the award. However, we strongly recommend waiting until the grant agreement is signed before incurring expenses. As a project makes progress on the awarded activities, the project contractors will start submitting reimbursement requests to the city. The city will review and submit those to Kelly at the council, and the disbursement of those funds works back through the same chain. So from council to city, and if there's a sub-grant recipient agreement, from the city to the developer, and then to those consultants and subcontractors or general contractor.
And we had a question in the chat here.
Oh,
about,
we did. Okay, great. Well, let's see.
Yeah, about emailing, when we can email the list of folks who are going to be working on an application. And that can happen anytime. As soon as the city knows who is going to be working on that application, you can go ahead and just send us a list. And like Marcus said, it makes the process of approving registrations a lot faster, a lot smoother if we have that list ahead of time.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for sharing that. We talked a little bit about the roles of the public applicant, the development project team, and the council. And we just went over the full process of the application to get started. Here, I'm going to go over the process for a project team or a developer interested in applying for a grant. It's a little bit different. So first, you want to talk to your city staff where that project is located. Since the city or other eligible public applicant will need to sponsor the application, you'll need to have that public support to apply to get what we're looking for, which is a resolution of support, public resolution. If you aren't sure who to contact at the city, you can contact Hannah or me, and we will connect you with the right person. Once you have talked to the city, we recommend setting up a conversation with Hannah and me. It's also helpful to have the city staff person you're working with in that conversation. Sharing an introduction to your project can help you confirm eligible activities and other aspects of your project story that can make for a stronger application. Third, the city will start an application in web grants. We recommend you wait to register an account in web grants until the city staff person has let us know that you're going to be working on that application. So that's why having that list can be so helpful. We can't approve your registration until we have that confirmation. Once the city has added you to the application, you as a registered person in web grants, then you will work with the city on answering those questions. And those are the application questions. And so as you're going through it, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We would rather that you email us every day than sit and think about what you should ask or what kind of questions you have or what we are looking for. We really want you to know kind of what would help and what would make an impact on your score. So finally, the city will submit the application for review. And again, our grant is between the city and the council rather than the project team and the council.
We have another question in the chat here
All
that
right,
I'm just gonna point
yes,
out.
thank you.
For projects that are located in Minneapolis, can you apply to the March 17th to April 21st window? And the answer is no. So Minneapolis is not participating in the first round of pre-development this year. We don't yet know about the second round of pre-development, but as soon as we do know, we'll make sure that we communicate that information out to everyone.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, for those of you that like to look a little bit further ahead, if you're awarded a grant, you'll move into that grant administration phase. You'll be working with Kelly Nosworski for everything post-award. If you're a developer or a general contractor, when you submit a request for payment to the city, you will need to submit documentation showing what work has been done. This is usually an invoice from a subcontractor. Hannah will be going over the eligible costs a little bit later in the presentation, but we often do get questions about one category, that is what should be submitted for community engagement. So in addition to your time and billing rate, we recommend that you include a summary that keeps track of how many people came to an event or a conversation, how you were engaging with people, and how the information that you received is going to inform your project going forward. So that's just one spoiler about what some of the eligible activities that you might hear later. After you submit a request for payment to the city, and the city submits it to us at the council, the city will get that funding within 35 days of our administration team approving that request. There are progress reports required twice each year. The city will fill these out and submit them through web grants. If your project changes during that period, we ask that you let us know as soon as you can rather than waiting for the progress report. All the information that you will need about grant administration is on our website under the current grantees tab. And we'll look at a couple screenshots of that soon. So before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about one particular aspect of reimbursement, advance payment. So we typically work on a reimbursement basis, paying for work that is already done. But if you need access to the funds up front to get started, individual cities can opt in to allowing partial advance payment of pre-development awards. So how does the prepayment or the advance payment work? Once all of the grant agreements are complete, that is the agreement between the council and the city, and the second agreement between the city and the development team, council staff will review the documents to ensure consistency with our grant terms and expected deliverables. After that, we will issue a prepayment of up to 50% of the grant total to the city. The initial payment is intended to reduce any cash flow issues or float burden by the project team, consultants, or subcontractors that are working on completing those eligible activities. After prepayment funds have been expended, so after that first 50%, the last 50% of the grant award will be dispersed through our typical process on a cost incurred reimbursement basis. So again, it is up to the city to decide whether to use this process or not. And we already know that some cities, including the city of Minneapolis, will not be able to use this process this year. So if you are awarded and you're interested in taking advantage of advance payment, we will coordinate that process with our grant administration staff when the time comes. So next, Hannah is going to talk to us a little bit more about application scoring.
Thanks, Marcus. The pre-development scoring structure is organized around the what and the how of your project. The what covers your project vision and goals and how they advance LCA and Thrive goals, soon to be Imagine 2050 goals. So we have a couple of priority areas. The priority areas that we are looking at are housing, economic opportunity, compact connected development, environment, and equity. So in this section, the what section will consider the big picture of the project and the outcomes of the project and what those impacts of the project are going to be. And in the application, the first question that we will ask you is, what is your project? What are you doing? What are you trying to achieve with this project? And this is a place for you to talk about how your project is aligned with those goals of housing, economic opportunity, compact connected development, environment, and equity. So that's a place for you to tell the story of your project, why you're doing this project, what you're hoping to achieve with your project. The how section is the process that you have already had in place or the process that you plan to use as you continue on in the development of your project. So this includes showing an understanding of who benefits from the project and how the project reflects the community that it is intending to serve. And we're also looking at the partnership between the public sector applicant and the development partners that are involved. So in this process section, I mentioned showing how the project is reflecting the community that's intending to serve. So a few different ways that we see that being achieved. We can see that being achieved through a robust and meaningful community engagement process. So how are voices of residents really directing the outcomes in the project, the design of the project, what the project is trying to do? We look to see, does the development team have a connection with the community that the project is intending to serve? So that could be having a strong connection to the neighborhood. If the project is serving a specific population, let's say you have a senior housing project, do you have someone that's active in the senior community as part of like an advisory committee for your project, so that that you're really representing the perspectives of the community that the project is going to be serving in your project. The final element in our scoring is a focus on equitable development outcomes. And while LCA considers equity broadly, we are looking to see how you're considering the intersection of race. Race is the largest predictor of inequitable outcomes in Minnesota, so projects that are considering racial equity are going to be prioritized. If you're looking at another form of equity, you will still receive points, but you won't receive full points unless you're also considering how race is impacting your project and the communities that it is intending to serve. And this is how we're looking at equity across all of our programs. Some of you might know that we have a minimum equity score in our development grants. We do not have a minimum equity score in the pre-development program. Marcus had talked a little bit about eligible activities. The funding is awarded for specific activities rather than to the project as a whole. And you can find a comprehensive list of eligible activities on our website and in our program essentials document. But I want to make a note of a couple of eligible activities and go over the ineligible activities. So project management and developer mentoring is available for new developers. For rehab and preservation projects, we can support a capital needs assessment to determine what kind of rehab needs to be done. And we can also support architectural design. Soft costs that are not directly related to a grant activity are ineligible. So things like general overhead costs and legal fees aren't eligible. We also cannot support small area planning, strategies for land banking, and again, work that was done prior to the award being made. We do have a policy development grant, so any cities that are interested in support for updating zoning code, having an inclusive housing ordinance, all of those things are eligible under our policy programs. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. And with going through the eligible activities, if you have questions about whether or not an activity is eligible, please just let us know. We have a fairly comprehensive list on our website, but there might be things that you have questions about or that maybe fall under one of those. So just let us know, and we're happy to talk through the eligible activities with you. Great, and we will move into going over application resources.
Yes. So the first thing we want you to know is that Hannah and I, we are probably your best resource. So please send us questions. You can email us. You can use, we have the bookings feature on our website that allows you to schedule time on our calendars to talk about your project. So we are both operating as a single program and a single application, but as you can see, both Hannah and I will be working on this. So we have a variety of other resources available to support applicants. One of them is something that Hannah mentioned just a moment ago. It's the 2025 Program Essentials, and that is in a PDF. That document includes detailed information on how our reviewers will be scoring your applications. So to find it, you can look for a link to the PDF at the bottom of the pre-development page. We included a link here in the chat if you want to glance at that. For each of the scoring criterion, we have listed questions that reviewers will be asking themselves when scoring your responses, as well as potential examples of how to achieve points for those, for that criterion. The examples are not exhaustive. It's not an exhaustive list, but should give you a better idea of what we're looking for each criterion. This resource also offers you a way to self-evaluate your projects and help you articulate your responses to each application question. It also has some notes and links to a project data profile tool where it may be most appropriate for you to use as a reference when you're thinking of that and crafting your response. So let's take a look at that profile. So to expand on that data profile, it is an online tool on the LCA website that you can use to summarize data near your project area. This data comes from the Metropolitan Council's Equity Considerations data set. It includes a wide variety of demographic and income data, and other information such as levels of housing cost burdened households or proximity to affordable daycare locations, for example. This is all census tract level data showing you how the tract where your project is compares to results at the city, as well as the 7-county region as a whole. We encourage you to use the tool to get more baseline information about your project site or the broader area, and to use this as a resource in perhaps other community development efforts or project needs that you may have. So the instructions are along the left-hand sidebar for using the tool. We've clipped that here. You can see it more easily in the tool itself. Feel free to ask questions about as you use this tool, or reach out to our colleague Maya Guerrero Combs, who manages the tool. Let's look at one more. All of our applications, as you have heard, are submitted using our online portal, Web Grants. So a link to the Web Grants platform can be found on our Apply page. You can see it's circled there in yellow. This page also has several resources that will help you as you go through your application. By going to that second blue bar, you can also access the data profile tool that we just talked about. If you go down to that fourth blue bar, closer to the bottom, the one with the title Application Resources, we have guidance on using web grants, links to past webinars, and tips for project teams that were developed from conversations with past successful applicants. Those can be valuable resources. The city will need to have a resolution approved by their city council to support applications that are submitted, along with the application that you send to us. So if you would like to see a sample of one of those resolutions, you can go back to that application resources bar and select application documents. You'll see a link to that there. We also have a resource library with more general topic content that includes information on things like public space design and equitable development. So did we get a question here that, let's see. The project data profile, yes, that's in that kind of second blue bar. If you kind of click on that one in the live site, you should be able to see the link to that tool. All right, I'm glad you saw it. I'm glad you saw it. So next, Hannah will go over some examples of successful pre-development requests, and I might have one too.
Thanks, Marcus. And that project data profile tool will also be linked in the application. So as you're working through the application, you can go directly to that tool from the application. So like Marcus mentioned, we are going to share an overview of 3 awarded pre-development projects from last year and highlight why they were competitive, what stood out about these projects. So the first project that we have to share is the Swank Eatery project. This was from the city of Minneapolis, and it's a redevelopment of an existing building in North Minneapolis. And the intent of this project is to have a food hall with space for local business owners and for food business owners to have space to grow their businesses. The development team also specifically mentioned hiring folks coming out of incarceration to provide job opportunities to residents who might face additional barriers to getting steady employment. This project stood out because it meets several of our LCA goals. The project is revitalizing a currently unused site in a densely developed area. The developer has a very strong connection to the neighborhood and has been involved with the West Broadway corridor for many years. And there also is a wealth building component to the project. So by providing space for local businesses to grow, those business owners are growing their potential to increase their household income. So when we're looking at your project, you might not have all of the details of outcomes. You might not know how many housing units you're going to have. You might not know affordability bands. You might not know the specific number of jobs. a lot of folks might be applying for funds to figure those things out. So at the pre-development stage, we're really looking at the intent of your project and how you are hoping to achieve the goals that we laid out at the beginning of this presentation, those LCA and Thrive and Imagine 2050 goals.
Another example is a manufactured home assessment that we received from the city of Blaine. The city of Blaine had proposed doing assessment of the building conditions, costs, and financing options to prioritize replacement of 190 out of about 851 existing manufactured homes. The intent was for those to remain affordable for the existing residents. In this case, although we weren't able to fund all of the city's request, the city did accept a partial award to support community engagement, conduct those assessments, those energy efficiency assessments, and identify other financing to preserve or replace the homes if needed. The project was recommended for funding based on the focus on preserving affordable housing, identifying options for energy efficiency, and it had a very strong engagement process. So the well-described process for identifying the homes and residents most in need, as well as the many ways that the city planned to reach out to the residents with diverse backgrounds, made it a strong candidate for the pre-development grant category.
The final project that we are going to highlight today is the Gloryville project in St. Paul. This is a mixed-use project with family-sized units and deeply affordable units. The development team for this project was selected through an RFP process that the city put out. And this project was a bit further along when they submitted their pre-development application, but that's not what stood out about the project. This is just an example of a project that was further along in the development process, but we don't take that into consideration when we are scoring your application. The developer had very strong connections to the community that was being served by the project and had a very strong and meaningful engagement process that is planned to continue through the development of the project. So the commercial space on the ground floor is planned to be an Asian grocery store, along with smaller spaces for businesses owned by residents of color. And this project is intending to bring, like I mentioned, affordable housing units with family-sized units, deeply affordable units, and supportive services, along with a culturally relevant grocery store and smaller commercial spaces for business owners of color. It had a really strong community engagement process, and the development team has a connection to the community that this project is intending to serve. So when we're looking at your project, and you'll see this detailed in the scoring criteria, those deeply affordable units, so 30% AMI or below, are units that are going to score the highest. And again, you might not know how many of those units you'll be able to have. You might not know if you will be able to have deeply affordable units. But again, we're looking at intent. So if part of what you're trying to do is figure out how can I maximize the number of deeply affordable units in the project, that's something that will score higher than projects that might be only considering market rate units, for example. So we have reached the question and answer portion of our session today. We do have some frequently asked questions prepared. But I'm going to pause here and just see if anyone has any questions. And again, you can drop those questions in the chat, or you can just come off mute and ask a question. Okay, I'm going to start running us through our frequently asked questions. And as you're thinking about questions, again, put them in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can come off mute. So a common question that we get is, how do I get connected to an application in web grants? The city staff person that you are working with is going to start the application and again will let us know who will be collaborating on the application. So that's where having that list of everyone who's going to be collaborating on the application, actually working on writing the application, is going to make this process much smoother. If you have never had an account in WebGrants, you'll need to set one up. If you have had an account in WebGrants and you still have access to that email address, you do not need to create a new account. If you've forgotten your password, which is very common, just let us know. We can get that information to you. You can reset your password. So
And
we will
get, oops, go ahead.
I can finish going through this one and then we can jump into that question in the chat. So we'll get a notification of registration requests. And if we don't have confirmation that you're working on the application, we'll need to get that from you. But once we have your registration approved, we have you connected with the city that you're applying to, the project staff person that you're working with will connect you into the application so that you can get started working on the application.
So we did get one question about timing of community engagement. Will a project be scored on its completed community engagement or the community engagement it plans to do, since timing right now might not allow us to complete engagement by the application deadline?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are not going to score you on exclusively engagement that you have already done. Knowing that projects are coming in early on, you might be requesting funds for community engagement. If that's the case, we'll be looking at your plan for community engagement. So we'll be looking to see, who do you plan on partnering with? Have you already started those conversations? What is your goal for community engagement? How will the engagement be informing the outcomes of the project? Things like that. So short answer, it is not scored on engagement that you have done. We'll be looking at what you plan to do.
Both, right, Hannah? Both. What you have done and what you will do.
Yep. Yeah. If you've already done engagement, we want to know what you've been doing already. But if you haven't, you won't be penalized for not having started yet. That was a good addition. All right. Another question we get asked often is, will the grant pay for work that has already been done? No. With pre-development, this is a very straightforward answer. The grants can only pay for work started after the award is approved. And I'm just going to pause between each of these to see if we have more questions, and then we can keep running through the questions that we get often.
A quick question.
Yes.
Regarding the award timeline, correct me if I'm wrong, but once an award has been announced between, if the city gets the award, say in June for that particular project, does that mean then eligibility timeline kicks in the day after, or do you wait for the project team waits until the subrecipient grant is executed? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So technically, it starts the day after the award is approved. So the way that our process works, once we have funding recommendations, we will email all of the project teams, let them know if you're being recommended for funding. If you're not being recommended for funding, then we bring that recommendation to our community development committee, where they will review, almost always approve the recommendations that we have put forward to them. Then it goes to our full council to give their final approval. Once that final approval happens at the full council meeting, that's when the eligibility timeline turns on. We do highly recommend waiting to start activities that you expect reimbursement for until you have that signed agreement. So there's a signed agreement between the council and the city, and then that subrecipient agreement between the city and the development team. It offers protection for everyone involved when you have that official agreement in place. But the eligibility timeline starts the day that the awards are approved.
The one addition I would make to that is if you are looking for that advance payment. In that case,
Mm-hmm.
we will want to see both agreements.
Yes, thank you for that, Marcus. Yeah. All right. And that was a great question. That answered our next frequently asked question. All right, so we have a question here. What if the city does not have a sponsorship application and are not applying? Can developers apply? No, developers cannot apply directly to LCA programs. So if the city is not, so for example, Minneapolis is not participating in this first round of pre-development, projects that are located in the city of Minneapolis will not be able to apply directly to LCA programs. That might change for the second round. We're not sure yet. And then again, any cities have to be participating in the LCA program in order to apply. And right now, I think we have 78 cities and townships across the region that are applying or that are eligible to apply. That would be so many applications. 78 cities and townships that are eligible to apply. So if you have any questions about eligibility or who to talk to at a city, please just let us know. And we have another question here. So regarding the application itself, do we need to have access to web grants to see it, or will it be available on the LCA website once it opens? So we will have a Word document of the application available on the website on March 17th when the applications open. And that really is to facilitate collaboration. Web grants can be a little bit tricky to use. So we have this Word document available. What I personally would recommend is collaborating in the Word document and then transferring those answers over into web grants when you have finished the editing and you're ready to submit the application. All right, I'm going to skip us down to the last question. And I think we may be a couple minutes over time, so I'm going to answer it super fast. What makes a successful application? In general, we want to know why this project now and why you are the right team to do this project. We want to know how you're addressing LCA goals and what you hope the impact of your project will be. Like we've said earlier, at this early stage in your development process, we know that you probably don't know exactly how many units of housing you're going to create, how many living wage jobs will be in the project. So at this stage, we really want to know how you are planning to have affordable housing, what depth of affordability you're striving for, or how you plan to create living wage jobs. So we're looking at your intent, we're looking at your plans, and we're looking at how you are trying to realize the outcomes that you are intending to have. We are a couple minutes over time, so we will close out quickly. Thank you all again so much for joining us this morning. And like we said, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Here are the dates again. Those dates are available on our website. And Marcus and I are more than happy to have a meeting with you to talk about your application. I'm taking the lead on the first round. Marcus will be taking the lead on the second round. But either one of us can answer questions or connect you in with the other. All right, so thank you all again. Bye.
Thanks for joining us all.